More and more research is showing that the control you have over your spine doesn't just affect your athleticism or your spinal health, it also affects your overall well-being, because vital organs are innervated through the same nerve pathways as the muscles which help you control spinal movement. So this curly hip and back extension works to fire up every muscle in our back from the hips, rippling up through the body as we unfurl like a fern and then curl back down. To be able to intentionally move each segment of your spine is a fantastic goal to have and a marker of great health. And it's not only important for movement, it helps you breathe better. And when you breathe better, you can manage pressure better. When you can manage pressure well, you not only massage your organs all day with each breath, but you also decompress your spine by being aligned and using the airbag of pressure in your abdomen. That looks like diagram A, where the forces or tensions are balanced between the abs on the front, the back muscles, the diaphragm on top, and the pelvic floor on the bottom. They create a zone of apposition or a containment within which pressure can build and dissipate with each breath.
The zone of apposition is the way your rib cage sits on top of your pelvis. Now, if you spill your rib cage forward and flare your ribs, you're opening up the lid on that canister. If you create a nice zone of apposition by dropping your sternum down and back and shortening the distance between your sternum and your sit bones, then when you breathe in, you've created a container which sends pressure backward to the sides and then ultimately upward and downward to decompress your spine.
And if we hold this containment, then while we move, we're able to keep the spine nice and stable and decompressed without excessive muscular tension, because we're using air pressure or visceral organ pressure, abdominal contents pressure. Now, B, we don't have the same thing. You'll notice that the ribs are flared and the back is compressed and the pelvis is tilted forward, and that pushes the contents of the abdomen forward towards our belly button and leaves the spine with no decompressive airbag. So segmental control and the ability to leverage that airbag are what enable us to stand tall and align ourselves with gravity rather than be compressed into all kinds of restricted, grotesque spinal shapes as we age. But this is ancient knowledge. Like in Taiji Chuan, this stuff is taught and it's known, maybe not with the same language that we talk about it in the modern West, but the same principles are applied of pressure, melting the tension around the body to become more aware of the line of gravity, and creating inner space in the body through breath and through movement which focuses on lengthening and thereby opens up the spaces which vital nerve channels pass through.
Now here's what a loss of segmental control tends to look like. My spine's a little bit noodly, my natural S-curve isn't there, and parts are really bending and flexing a lot more than others. And then when I connect my spine, I'm actually able to hold neutral because I can control the segments. And now you can see that my hips are the main driver of the movement, and I can maintain that nice rib-pelvis stack. And we're focusing on the ability to control rib flare, which is this movement right here, but through a range of motion in a hinge. So that looks like this, drawing the ribs up and back so that I feel stacked and I'm pointing through my sit bones and hips, instead of expecting just a couple of my vertebrae in my lower back to have the power and range of motion that my hips have, which is obviously much, much greater. So if your hips are restricted and you're not able to coordinate through the spine, you'll end up moving a bit like this, where there's a lot of flexion and extension in particular segments of your lumbar spine. What we want is to connect the torso and be able to drive the movement and the range through the hips, like so, while keeping the front ribs pulled in. So here you see the first example again, but I'm able to tuck my hips and shift my sternum and front ribs back before I extend. So that's the key skill. Can you actually go from a flared rib position to a stacked rib position deliberately? Because if you can control this and if you have strength here, then you've got a much higher chance of both noticing and controlling it under higher spinal loads. When you know what you're doing, there is no wrong way to move. So why would you choose to move under load with a wiggly, disconnected spine when you could be using the zone of apposition and the airbag of pressure to support your spine? I can't really see a good reason. I prefer teaching people to move from the inside out, taking care of their vitality, their spine, their breath, and their organs, and then building movement options from there. I do it this way because I spent so many years forcing my body to move in a way it wasn't ready for, focusing on output rather than throughput, moving in a way that seemed to look right rather than the way that felt right. So now I've learned to apply the principles of movement to move in a way that feels right and functions efficiently. And my life has changed. So that's what I want for you. So this is a good place to start because not everyone has access to a GHD and maybe you haven't done any bendy spine work before. Using a Swiss ball on a floor which it grips to so it doesn't slide away from you, you're going to press your hips down and forward into the Swiss ball and extend the crown of your head as tall as possible. Then allow yourself to relax down around the Swiss ball at the bottom. So you're moving from an extended spine to a flexed spine and back again, but you're initiating with that drive of the hips and pressing your feet through the wall. From here, you can start to get a little bit more curvy, so you can really press the hips in and stay rounded through the spine and unfurl like a fern. So now we're getting more similar to the first movement I demonstrated for you. This is slightly more advanced. It's going to light up those back muscles a bit more. I want you to really make sure that before you start extending and opening up your spine, you've driven those hips forward as far as you can. Now the position of the Swiss ball dictates the stimulus I'm going to get. So if I move the Swiss ball under my lower back or belly rather than under my hips, then that's the part of my body that's going to be doing the flexing and extending. So if I'm trying to target my lower back specifically, then this is a good idea. But if I'm someone who habitually uses their lower back a lot and doesn't access their hips as well as they would like, then I would move the Swiss ball further back under the hips so that they're the main movement point. And if both of those felt too strenuous, you can even try resting the knees on the ground, provided the Swiss ball isn't going to slip, and really driving through the thighs and hips into the ball. And this is going to be much more of a lower body intensive stimulus, but much easier on your back. And you can see to make it nice and easy here, I'm not even really flexing and extending the spine. I'm just driving through my glutes and hamstrings. Whatever part of you is resting on the ball is going to be the part that's activating the most. So you can move it around and find different positions and see what lights up the part of your body that you actually want to train. So one of the most important parts about getting on the GHD is that you learn to drive with your hips first. The more range you can get out of your hips, the later your lower back is going to come into the movement. And the later your lower back comes into the movement, the higher you can go before running out of lower back range. And then vertebra by vertebra, you're going to open up as much as you can before the next one opens until you're a really tall, nice, spirally fern. And then you're going to do the opposite of tucking the chin first, rounding through the upper back, vertebra by vertebra, all the way down, and the hips are the last thing to go. So as you're doing this, feel for your hamstrings, glutes, lower, mid, upper back, and neck all lighting up together. You can bring the shoulder blades into it too, like let the arms and the shoulders encourage the movement of your spine by creating space where you want to expand. So here I'm getting my shoulder blades back and out the way to expand my chest. And as I round, I'm bringing them forward to expand my back. So that's it, guys. Enjoy pumping life force through that beautiful spine of yours.